Good evening. I am going to call this regular voters meeting assembly to order, and we'll start with a devotion by Pastor Berg.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Let us pray. Almighty God and Lord, as you have called us to labor in your vineyard, so grant us now your presence. Enlighten and guide us by your word, that in all the matters of deliberation we may always consider the best interests of your church and of this congregation. Let your Holy Spirit rule and direct our hearts, that in the spirit of Christian love, we may present and discuss matters and be kindly disposed toward one another, to the end that all we say and do may please you. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you. So we will start with the membership changes. So I'm going to ask, we have a number of new members that would like to join the Voters Assembly. So if you are not already a registered member, if you could come forward, and we'll have you introduce yourself, and then we will vote on accepting you as voting members, and then have you sign the registry. All right, come on. So just introduce yourself.
Thomas Kelly. I'm looking to become a voting member. I don't do a person of karaoke here, or no? All right, good.
Marlene Fors.
Jennifer Jordan.
John Jordan.
Kirk Duco.
Becky Trutchell.
Mark Duco.
Adam Glachik.
Heather Leibham.
Carl Schrader.
Nick Collins.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion to accept these new members. I have a motion. We have a motion and a second. Any questions? Then we will vote on having these members join us as voting members. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, nay? Okay, motion's carried. So if you don't mind, if you can sign the registry, which has been kept forever, and then when you sign, Lori will actually give you then a ballot for the call, which is later in the process, okay? So while they are signing, we'll move on to the next item, which is the removal of non-active voting members. So if you remember, we do have in our policy that if you are considered not active if you do not attend or request to be excused from 3 regular voters meeting. So we have 3 individuals that fall into that category: Kelly Thiel, Matthew Thiel, and Allison Terp. So I will entertain a motion to remove those 3 members from the voting roll. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any questions on that policy? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you. So while they are finishing that up, there is some material that we did run out of. We did run out of some of the budget sheets, and also there's will be the second reading or presentation of changes to the Constitution and bylaws. We did run out of that side-by-side comparison. If there is anybody that would like a copy of that, we'll send somebody down now to run a few copies. So if you did not get a copy of the changes to the Constitution bylaw, it would be a separate packet, have a big green square on the front. So if you did not get that and would like to review that before we vote on acceptance, raise your hand and we'll get a count and have some photocopies run. One. Okay. Second. Pastor, can somebody run like 6 copies, please? That way we'll. All right, as that is wrapping up, we'll move to the approval of the minutes section. If there are no objections, I would like to approve these minutes as one section rather than 4 individual. Thank you. Any objections to that? Okay, we'll proceed. So we have the January 17th regular Voters Assembly meeting, and then special Voters Assembly meetings on March 12th, April 21st, and April 29th. We have a motion to approve. Do I have a second? And we have a second. Any questions on the minutes? Yes. Pardon me? What was the reason for this? The March 12th special meeting was to issue a call to a cantor, Tim Shoemaker, and Tim did return, did not accept the call. The April 21st special orders meeting was a or why did he say no?
About us, but felt like he needed to. That he was involved and is involved in a new organ project, and it's not finished. It should have been finished by now, but I think they stepped up on their end after we called. But anyway, so that's for Tim. For Laura Hillman, she has allergies that she's particularly and our building didn't work for her. Can you hear me? Okay, so she has allergies and our older building didn't work for her. So there's nothing wrong with what we have in here, but it didn't work for her. So she returned the call. Renata Peppercorn accepted the call to be our new cantor. And she'll be getting here sometime in July, yes. And she's a phenomenal organist and teacher and all the rest.
Any other questions on the minutes? And all those in favor of approval, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you. So for the President's report, Kurt is unable to be with us. He's down with family, as his mother is in hospice currently. Report from him, the Church Council did approve new board members for the Board of Christian Day School in Nick Franzen and Lori Ladigas, and elders Eric Nimmer, Tony Smith, Adam Glatzik, and Jeff Jers. Also, the Executive Committee did a virtual meeting on April 16th. We voted to extend the designation to Ms. Peppercorn, and as you realize, we had that meeting already, and she accepted our call. We are currently working on putting together a long-range planning committee. So if you are interested in that, please contact the church office. And then the Church Council did approve a change in the employee handbook indicating that if employee does not complete an education program that is funded by Trinity or leaves Trinity while still enrolled in that program that is funded by Trinity, they will reimburse Trinity half the cost of the program incurred to Trinity up to that point. Any questions on that report? Okay. We will then move on to the treasurer's report.
All right, what you guys are referencing in this packet is the larger sheet. I will go into it in a little bit more detail, but my projection, or our projection for the end of the year, is to end the year with a $67,000 budget deficit. Last year, the Voters' Assembly had approved a $57,000 budget deficit, so it isn't far off from what we were originally projecting. The other thing to note on the page is we are in historically a pretty good cash position, with the total cash position being almost $1.3 million as of the end of April. So again, I will get into a little bit more of the nuts and bolts of the 2024-2025 work program when we get to that. Yeah. The loan balance is 173, and it's, I'm sorry. The monthly. That should actually be in your packet. I don't have that packet in front of me. I can find it. Hold on. Yeah, $735 a month. So, yeah, thank you. And the rate on that loan is fixed for the next couple of years. If it were to reprice itself, I'd say we need to start consider paying it down. But right now, it's fixed at like 3 and some odd %. So it's not terribly expensive. And the other thing is we've tapped that when our cash position hasn't been as healthy as it is right now. We have paid it down a little bit over the last 12 months. The last 12 months, I think it started at 180 some odd thousand. It's down to 173. Okay.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, our books are audited quarterly, and that's Huberty CPAs. It's a CPA firm in Sheboygan. Actually, I think they're headquartered out of Fond du Lac, but they have a location in Sheboygan and in Plymouth.
And could that be reported, say, once a year to our Voters' Assembly? The result, not the details, but...
Yeah, I mean, we could certainly furnish that to the Voters' Assembly. Yeah, what I can tell you is in that report is there are two things. There's accreditation that the school goes through, and then there's the results of the audit. And they've pointed out a couple of different things, areas where we differ from other organizations. So, yeah, I can add that for future consideration.
Yeah, I would appreciate hearing that on an annual basis.
Yeah, sure.
Right. Any other questions for John? Then we will move on to Church Council recommendations. The first is the endowment fund allocations, and you will find that on the second to last page in the main packet, the packet that has the agenda on it. So the church council did vote unanimously to move this forward to the voters' assembly. I'll give you a second to review and then entertain a motion to accept. We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If there are no questions, then all in favor of the endowment distributions, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Thank you. The next item is recommendations for the church council for the 2024 to 2027 terms. The nominations are listed in the agenda. Kurt Grubin has agreed to serve a second term for president. Aaron Yanko has agreed to serve as secretary. Nicole Muth has agreed to a second term as stewardship. Lita Carlson has agreed to serve for youth. And Julie Jers has accepted to the at-large position. So I would entertain a motion to accept those new council members. I have a motion. Do I have a second? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on those candidates? Any other candidates? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you. So under new business, before we get to the 2024-25 fiscal budget, I am going to move off. And the first item, last year when we were working on budget, it was requested that we take, when we talked about increasing the number of vouchers that we would accept, we wanted to take some money and fund an endowment in case the voucher program ever was ended. Again, we can't take the voucher money and put it there, but this is other money that is surplus that we would move there. So the first thing we need to do before we can do that is actually approve the establishment of an endowment for the school. And on the packet that starts with the reports, with the president report, the last 2 pages, the first is the recommendation to establish Trinity Lutheran School endowment. I am not, in the interest of time, going to read that full page to you. I will let you peruse it and then entertain a motion to establish the Trinity Lutheran School endowment. I have a motion to accept or to set up that endowment. Do I have a second? And I have a second. Thank you. Any discussion? Chuck Benedum is here from the Endowment Committee, and he can answer any questions you may have. Would anyone like a further explanation of why we're setting up this endowment? Couple sentences.
I'll just give you a quick comment that we started this conversation probably back in September or October, and then the council gave us a directive in November to actually put together a document. I will, thanks to the committee, the endowment committee, and to Alan Voss, we worked hard to put this document together, and it took us a number of months to present to the council and then vote and so forth. And it had something to do with the difference between the voucher payment and the school tuition. That's how it started. And then that kind of settled down for a while, this about whether the voucher program was going to go away or not, and that kind of eased off. And then in between, there was a substantial gift that was received by Trinity Lutheran Church, which would be a nice opportunity maybe to begin funding a school endowment. And so that came into the play. And so we met with our committee. We had a presentation in our committee from Craig Terp from the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod Foundation. And then he also presented to the church council. And ultimately, we recommended that this school endowment would be established, and that it would be established with the management of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod Foundation. And once, and if that's approved, then we'll sign those documents and we'll go ahead funding it. One of the nice things about having Craig Terp involved with this is that he is hands-on in terms of developing a program within our congregation where congregational members can use planning and thoughts about how they can help the endowment fund grow. He's very involved in that, and it's really a nice thing to be able to see. And I think you'll see over the course of time that with both the church endowment and the school endowment, we'll try to have a much greater awareness of the endowment program here in our church. So that's kind of how it all came about. So there's actually two recommendations that Dave can take you through. One is to establish the account, and the other is to establish it with the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod Foundation.
Eric.
Without having the time to read through all of this, what would these funds be, how would these funds be dispersed? And for what purposes? Would it be direct aid to students and families? Would it be for general operations? And then how does that work alongside the existing endowment fund? Is there any changes to that that go along with this?
We spent quite a bit of time, Alan Voss and myself, talking about that issue. We wanted to make sure that we weren't tying our hands too much, and so the wording for the distribution is relatively general, but it would not be for the operation of the school. Certainly, financial assistance could be used, special programs. It's basically going to come from the Board of Christian Education with the principal and the pastors. The recommendation would come to the endowment committee to review. So I would say maybe Alan would want to say, I see his hand up, he might want to say another word or two about that.
So the distribution standard is set out in the middle of that policy page, number 1, and it actually could be used for operating because that would be what we would need if the voucher program suddenly went away. So that's why we wanted to keep it as broad as possible so that it could be used to keep the school afloat in the event that we were in a dire financial situation. The difference between this and the rest of the endowment fund is the principal can be used, not just the income. The rest of the endowment is restricted that only the income can be used. This would be different in that the principal and the income could be used. And then as you'll see there, the requests are reviewed by the endowment committee. They're made by the Board of Christian Day School, consultation with the pastors and the principal. So there's some procedures in place to make sure that those funds are used wisely. It would come back to the voters' assembly for final approval, just like the other endowment requests that we made tonight.
And does it suggest, are there any changes in the rules or requests for the church's endowment fund, general endowment fund?
No, there's no other changes to the existing endowment funds. Because we're not changing the bylaws of the existing fund, we're segregating this as a separate fund within the endowment fund. Not a separate, right, it's a separate fund within the endowment. There's a reference to the bylaws in there that allows the congregation to accept a designated gift for a special purpose. So this is being established at the request of the church council for a specific purpose, which includes the use of principal. So the endowment fund always has the ability, if someone came forward and said, I'd like to make a gift for this purpose, but it could be interest in principal, you have the ability to do that if the congregation accepts it. So that's what we're doing here, is we are accepting a designated gift, setting up.
So as you would, but you would have to accept it, you'd have to, the principal could be touched if upon entrance into the endowment fund, it is already designated. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes,
You don't
it's
have to have a
it's being put into the endowment fund with an understanding that it is an exception that the principal can be used.
And it would only be able to go into this portion, the school endowment fund, which is within
Correct.
the broader.
Right. If it goes into the general endowment fund, only the income can be used, unless there's a provision that the voters' assembly, I think with 2 meetings or supermajority, can approve use of principal from the regular endowment fund.
So the church side is far more restrictive, and whereas the school one is less restrictive. But it all has to go through the voters as well.
But I have a better understanding now of how this works, and I was curious how the broader set of rules would work within the narrow set of rules.
Well, and Wisconsin Bank and Trust has the church one right now. The Lutheran, if we approve this, would have the other side.
So, and then that makes it even more confusing, but I understand that how.
There's an endowment of Trinity, there's a school endowment, and there's a church endowment. That's how I get it.
And
But the school endowment is within the church's school endowment.
it is within, legally it is within the existing endowment fund. It is a special fund within the endowment fund.
And the current broader endowment fund is Trinity Lutheran Church and School with narrow restrictions. This has broader
Yes.
allowances.
Yes, because the general endowment fund can be used for certain purposes that benefit the school. Continuing education, student, financial aid, I forgot what else, but this is intentionally designed that it can go beyond that, because what I think we found is that those restrictions are actually problematic if it comes to a situation where we need to keep the school afloat. We can't give everybody, enough student aid to make it.
But this would allow somebody to make a designated gift to go within this portion, the school portion of the
Yes.
fund, and you could take that principal right back out and use it.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Rob had a question.
How much is in government fund?
That's a good question.
Chuck, do you have those numbers? How much is in the current endowment fund? Are you, he wants to address that in his report, if you can wait for that. It is not in the budget, I don't believe, correct? I don't have the endowment numbers inside the budget. So Chuck would like to just address the general endowment during his report, if you're okay with that? Do you have any idea?
He just wants to know what's in the church endowment fund. 1.4 million?
1.4 million? All right, the motion on the table is to establish the Trinity Lutheran School endowment. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you. Then we will move on to the second recommendation, and that is to use the LCMS Foundation to manage and invest the Trinity Lutheran School Endowment Fund. Have a motion? I have a motion. Do I have a second? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Eric?
Who is that?
It's controlled by a board of trustees that are, some are elected by the Synod Convention and some are appointed by the board of directors. I actually was on that board of trustees at one time. So it's a synodic, it's controlled, ultimately supervised by the Synod board of directors and the Synod Convention.
What other things are they managing? Are they managing other synodical investments or?
Yes, they manage, I don't know how total amount that they manage, but they manage some of the college endowments and individual congregation endowments. 650 million. Yeah.
Any other questions?
One other real comment. I asked also where the assets and custody at U.S. Bank. So you have a regulated bank that's holding the assets as well.
All right, any other questions? If not, all in favor of using LCMS Foundation to manage and invest in the school endowment fund, signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you. So with the approval of those, we will now move on to the 24-25 fiscal year budget. John?
Okay. As he had said, John Rint, I'm the treasurer. If you like what I have to say, if you don't like what I have to say, my name's Andy Rint. All joking aside, what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through just some high-level assumptions on where I think we're going to end the year. We're obviously not there yet. I mean, I have the numbers through the end of April. And then I'll walk you through some of the projections for expenses this year, tuition, some salary assumptions, what's going on with the voucher program, and then some variables, because I think this year we have probably a few more variables than what we typically have at this point in the year in the way of vacancies and some challenges in finding staff. So go to the next slide. So last May, you guys approved a 2023-2024 budget of deficit of $57,481. We're projected to finish the year pretty close to that at $64,270. What was inside of that budget, which is very different, was what we were talking about in the endowment. That was seeding the endowment, and that was taking the excess voucher payment of that $117,586 and establishing the endowment based on the calculation of excess voucher payments that the voters had approved. If we didn't do that and we kept that in the operating fund, we'd actually have a budget surplus, just so you guys have an understanding of where that is. And then we're in a relatively strong cash position, historically speaking, where we have almost $1.3 million in our operating fund. So we can go to the next one. What I'm displaying here is just historically. Historically, Trinity, these are the numbers back to 2012, has run a six-figure budget deficit. In the last 4 or 5 years, we've gotten a little bit better in managing expenses and projecting what our revenues were going to be to fund operations. And we even had a surplus in those years, which is pretty cool. So let's go to the next one. So inside of here, this is what makes up Trinity's budget. Trinity's budget is very simple. It's salaries and wages make up pretty much 80% of the overall budget. You're going to see that it's less than 75% this year. The reason why it went down from the historical 80 to like the 75% is an additional $150,000 projection for endowment seating at some point towards the end of the calendar year work program, which we would do in 2025, in June of 2025, after the voters would approve it at that point. But that's built into the 2024-2025 budget. Let's fast forward to the next one. One of the biggest challenges, I think, on the school side of things is wages. And what I'm showing here is where Trinity stacks up versus the Synod scale. And we have been chugging along at 3% and 4% increases, and we haven't been keeping serve with what our target has historically been. Historically, our target has been to try and be at 75% of the Synod scale. And what we're projecting in this year's budget is a 6% increase to our baseline salary scale. And really what you're watching here is you're watching this gray line, right? We've been at 66, 67%. If we do a 6% increase across the board to the scale, that means we get to 72.5% of the scale. If we do that again next year, we might get to over that 75% in a target. We just have to watch and see kind of what the Synod scale does there. I will make a comment. I don't have a lot of good data to build a story on as it regards our other large expense, which is benefits. Our benefit package, I would argue, is second to none. I would say where we are lagging the Synod scale here, we more than make up for in benefits. But this is something that I think with talks with Mrs. Raisky and others, we needed to address. And it has been a challenge when we are talking to new teachers and or other workers. So we'll fast forward to the next one, Pastor. So the incomes that fund the overall operation, about 50-ish% come from plate offerings. Another, call it 15 to 16% come from tuition. There's a small sliver that's just fundraising, that's other. And then the vouchers is about 34% of the overall picture. Again, inside of that number is going to be annual funding for endowment. So we can go on to the next one. So I know that the increased reliance on the voucher program is a hot topic. I get it. I don't have it with me right here. I have it back in the pew, but I actually have data on what every other parochial school in Sheboygan County is doing. It's public information. You can go out and get it on the school choice program. It's interesting to see what others are doing. We are nowhere near as reliant on that program as many other schools are. I mean, I'll make reference to one. I mean, Sheboygan Christian took $3.3 million worth of voucher payments in calendar year 23. So that really kind of shocked me. So educational seating, we talked about that a little bit when we were talking about the endowment. There was $117,586 that will go in to start that endowment. I had a conservative number of an additional contribution of $282,414 out of the cash from the Dots estate, and then an additional 150 built into this budget, which would be, a $550,000 investment over the course of the next 12 months to try and get that endowment going. So that's where we are with that. The next one. So some of the areas where go ahead.
Can I ask a question?
Sure. Yeah, no, go for it.
Could you go back to the previous slide?
Yeah.
So we've had discussion in the past about capping the reliance on the voucher program. Sure. And we came to, I think it was a one-time agreement last fall, if I remember correctly, and changing that. And I think
trying to understand the question so I can answer it.
The caps, I can answer that. The caps remain, and we still, but the idea here is to try and grow our own endowment to become less and less reliant on the voucher program. So to grow it as fast as we can. And so in answer to the question from last year, the voters said, then we need to put money aside to start doing that. And so that is what we've done.
And if we're putting money from the voucher program into the
No, it's not from the voucher program funds the students. And that's a separate thing, and that's separate in everything we do. But it does free up some congregational money to do the endowment. So you have to understand that correctly.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, and they know that, it's fine, but because they know what it costs to educate a student, and so they're going, how many students are on it, and this is how much we give, and that funds that student. So the funding there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just to understand correctly how that's being done. So we have other money coming from other sources that we're doing for the endowment.
Yeah, so the other 66% of the funds, either plate or tuition or whatever, you can say, all right, we spent this $650,000 or $700,000 that the endowment or that the voucher program provides us, and we're only saving, a chunk out of the plate offering or a chunk out of the tuition money. We always show that the money from the voucher program is spent because we have to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But is there a calculation, like there should be, to say, okay, if the funding of the school is 100% and the voucher program is 30%, I won't go any further. That's okay, thank you. I think you answered my question.
Okay.
And I don't want to derail the whole.
Hence the endowment.
Yeah. Okay. These are some of the areas that I think when we switched from an annual budget to a calendar year budget, we haven't really seen in a while, but I'll start with the one in the middle. We're just having some challenges filling teaching positions. And we made projections inside of the budget based on a guess of where those teachers are going to fall on the salary scale and what kind of benefit package they're going to need. It's conservative in those estimates, but if somebody comes in, needing family insurance and their 16 plus years of experience is very different than somebody who's 8 years of experience and falls on the single scale. I erred on the side of caution there across the board. The other thing that we've had some challenges with is filling positions in the childcare area. Again, in teaching positions are the same thing. And then, we're in aging buildings. I mean, we could have something go wrong that we don't plan for. I mean, we build in maintenance costs of $250,000 a year, but yeah, so those can be variables. Then with that, I'll take the next one, which is questions. Oh, none? Okay. Yeah. It is, yes. He asked, is the voucher program capped at a certain percentage of students? And it is capped at a certain percentage of students. It's my understanding that it does not include staff members, students who, and Mrs. Racy, you're going to have to, it does not include Trinity staff members, students who qualify for a voucher inside of that number. But yes, it's capped at 25%. So what? 33%. Stand corrected. Yeah, Nick.
I'll just chime in on that. And we had a lot of conversations on making sure that every single staff member who came here would have the right to enter their child. And that can happen at any time. We would never want to say no to someone who qualified for a voucher that was a staff member's child. So
Yeah, that is correct.
And that's also the priorities. The priorities always get our staff members' children in. They don't count our percentage, and then when there's a congregation member with voucher comes in, and then it's open to anyone else that's.
Yeah, correct, yes.
We did establish all that as a board. This year when voucher numbers came in, it was a non-issue. We're well within the percentage, including staff children. So we didn't hit the cap that the congregation set for us for this year anyway. And so we have all those safeguards in place, but it wasn't something that we had to address or go through the order because we didn't have enough voucher applications to make that necessary.
Any other questions?
Right, I will entertain then the motion to accept the 24-25 fiscal year budget work program as presented. A motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Before we move on to the next item, I beg your forgiveness. Under 3A, I did not handle the membership changes. So on the second sheet, the back of the agenda, is a list, second page, is a list of the membership changes from January 17th through May 22nd. I will entertain a motion to accept those membership changes. I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions? No questions. All those in favor of the membership changes signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Moving back to new business, unless there are any objections, I would like to do the next two releases together. And I will make the motion to issue a peaceful release of the call to both Dr. Sam Etherton and Lois Etherton. I have a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Thank you. Motion carries. Right. The next item is a call for teacher. All voting members were issued a ballot. When you registered, there are 59 voting members present, and the call committee nominates Mr. Tim Eigenfeld. Are there any other nominations from the floor? Any other nominations from the floor? I have a motion to close nominations and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Jenna, would you mind presenting information on Tim?
So Tim's biography information has been available in the back of the church. He is currently serving at Trinity Lutheran School in Trinity, Wausau, where he teaches and also helps with some administrative duties. He has experience in grades 3 through 8. And so, we're in a unique position right now just to give you a couple of updates at this time. Miss Isabel Powers, our 4th grade teacher, has decided to return to graduate school for school psychology, so we had a 4th grade position open as well. We have asked Kathy Berg if she would be willing to teach 4th grade, and Kathy is deliberating that right now. Kathy is not a rostered worker, Pastor Berg's wife, but she is a Concordia graduate. She's just not on the roster eligible for a call. She currently teaches at St. Paul's in Sheboygan. She's an elementary trained teacher, and so she is talking about that, and so she will give us her decision by the end of the week. And so that fills our candidate position, our 4th grade position. Mrs. Nancy Glauchek is part-time 5th grade, and so Tim Eigenfeld will be able to help with that other part-time of 5th grade, so he's a great option for that, but he also does have experience down to 3rd grade. So depending on how creative we have to get next fall, he will be a really useful asset for that as well. He does come with quite a bit of leadership experience, so he helps out at their school right now, assists their principal in some of their duties. The accreditation document that they gave, there was indication that finding some leadership support would be helpful, not in a full-time capacity, but with the size of our school and with the number of programs that we're in, there was a recommendation to at least seek some part-time assistance, so he would help with that as well. And so this would allow us to have someone in the building who has some good flexibility. I think from what Dave said, and he was being very nice about it, but to say that the teaching shortage is a challenge right now is an understatement. And so the amount of names that we've received or candidates that are available is pretty sad, just in terms of what's available. And now we've hit a point in the year with Laura Hillman having to decline the call that now we've gotten really late in terms of called teachers being willing to take a call and move locations, especially when many of them were looking to relocate. So our call committee did go through the process numerous times, reached out to numerous candidates, did a lot of interviews, initial phone calls to see if there was even interest. And so to have someone like Tim, who's experienced, very ministry-minded, and is that versatile, would be really, really beneficial to us. It also helps free me up a little bit if I have some leadership help to be assisting in classrooms, to be helping onboard our new staffs. Having someone like Renata in the building, it will be a huge blessing, but also means extra support from a leadership perspective. And then as the voters approve the educational endowment, as many of you know, when you put an endowment into place, while we would be seeding that endowment, there is also a need to grow that endowment. And so part of my school leadership role in my job description is also to help with fundraising and putting together funds. And so that would be something that would be added to the description. So having Tim there to help with some of the day-to-day things could be a great asset. But our committee, when we interviewed him, which there's other members of the committee here that could speak to this, felt that not only was he a solid educator, but such a church worker, servant-hearted, wants to be involved and is willing to serve in his church too. And you know how many hats we wear at Trinity. That's the kind of church worker that you need to be here. Someone who's kind of willing to buckle up and do what needs to be done. He also does all of their technology at Trinity Wausau, which we haven't had a technology coordinator since Brian, who wasn't actually a technology coordinator. But so that's another huge part of our overall ministry. With how much online we have, that would be a huge asset to have a teacher in the building who also has that in his skill set.
Any questions for Jenna?
Yep. He's in his 9th year of ministry. Yep. Yep. From Concordia, Wisconsin, actually.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, if there's no other questions, again, 59 voting members, you have your ballot. You can select Tim. You could write in a candidate, or you can leave it blank. Are there any numbers in there? Nick and Lois, can I have you assist with ballot counting, please? If there are no objections while the votes are being counted, I'd like to move on to the unfinished business and move to the Constitution and bylaw changes. This would be the second regular voters meeting to review those changes. Again, that's a separate packet. We ran short. We do have a few more though. The green at the front. All right. I am going to ask Alan just to recap some of the highlights from those changes.
So if you look at the sheet, on the left-hand column are the current bylaws, the right-hand column are the new ones, and you should be able to identify with the red places that were changed. Most of the changes were relatively minor. There aren't very many that are significant changes from the way we operate. The section that's in green are the sections that are, at least in theory, non-changeable. There's a debate about whether or not you can actually have provisions that are non-changeable, but those are the ones that our bylaws identify that cannot be changed. A lot of the changes were just terminology to fit current usage. Some changes to reflect the way we actually have been doing things as opposed to the way our bylaws actually required them. And I'm just trying to think if there's anything that was more substantial to, it's been a while since I last looked at these, but I don't recall there being any changes that would have been considered controversial. Most of them are just very changes in grammar, style, consistency, and then making things the way that we're actually doing them.
Are there any changes that are different from what we looked at last fall, or is this just the second time we've seen the same thing?
Second time for the same thing.
Thank you, Alan. Any questions on the changes to the Constitution and bylaws? So I think I may have done this backwards. We have a motion to accept the changes for the Constitution and bylaws. I have a motion and a second. We had discussion. Any other discussion?
I should point out one thing is that if we approve them tonight, then they have to be sent to the district's constitutional committee for that committee to review, so they very well may come back with something that says we need to do differently.
Yes, thank you. Any other discussion, questions? All those in favor of the Constitution and bylaws changes, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Moving back to the voters, or the call. I said there were 59 members present. One voting member did have to leave, so 58 votes were cast. So a total of 30 were needed. 58 votes were cast for Tim Eigenfeld. So I have a motion to make the vote unanimous by standing vote. Do I have a second? All those in favor, please stand. Thank you. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, we will move on to reports. Jeff Grayfield is not here for elders. Do I have anyone?
Yeah, council approved for another term Eric Nimmer, Tony Smith, and Adam Glatchek, and Jeff Jers is a new elder and he'll begin in September to 3-year terms. And we thank Pastor Dustin Christobiak for his years spent on the board. And We pray God's blessings on their move to Southern Illinois. We're going to miss them, we're going to miss the Ethertons as well. I wanted to say earlier, but I didn't want to slow things down, but there was actually a pastor here who didn't get a peaceful release, and they made him stay, Pastor Zorn. But we're letting you go reluctantly, Sam and Lois.
All right, moving on to Christian Day School. Tom is also, I believe, chaperoning the 8th grade class trip. Jenna, do you want to cover?
The accreditation team visit occurred on April 15th and 16th, and actually I have that in my report as well, so I will just talk through a couple of those recommendations during my report, but just giving a big thank you from the board for everybody who was very supportive and for all of the teachers for all of their hard work. We do have 2 recommendations that we brought forward to the council that need to be brought to the voters for new board members for our next 3-year term. Do I do those recommendations? Oh, just a report. Great. Okay. So we are bringing Lori Lattages onto the school board because Lori has to be done being council. So we are giving her no break, and then we are bringing her back to the school board. So thank you to Lori. And then Nick Franson currently serves on the board and will be renewing for another 3-year term. We also gave our recommendation of endowment fund disbursements, which was submitted to council that you voted on, and so that was one of our latest board measures that we did as well. And we wanted to give a thank you to our board members for this year. Thank you to Caitlin Kristoviak, who obviously is relocating and will be stepping off the board, and then Robert Wiltsius, who has served a 6-year term. So we have our final board meeting on June 3rd, where we will review any policy and any other contracted staffing updates for next year.
Thank you. Christian education, Tyler is not here.
We have VBS coming up in Remembrance of May and Trinity. That's July 15th to 19th with St. Paul and Lutheran Memorial. All 3 churches are together. And they're working on Cradle Roll. We do need summer Sunday school volunteers this summer. Also, we had a great Tuesday evening class. We had an average of 40 people for that Tuesday evening class on the book of Hebrews. We will have another one with Charles Courtwright. Dr. Courtwright will be teaching on Job in September on 4 Tuesdays beginning in September. So we're going to keep that going.
Evangelism, Mr. Zick.
Hi. As you can see there, I'll continue to be writing the Tell the Good News paragraphs in most Sunday bulletins throughout the summer. A number of people have said they enjoy them. I hope you find them somewhat useful, but also as just an added prod or a reminder that Jesus would have us share the good news. As the shepherds went out and rejoiced and told everybody what they had seen and heard, and as Peter reminds us, that we should be ready to give an answer for the hope that we have in the Lord Jesus Christ. This is something that doesn't need to be a large formal program, but rather is most effective when Christians share their faith in a conversational way as the opportunities arise. So I encourage you to do that. And I'm checking out now more things from the Lutheran Hour Ministries Project Connect. Many of those things have been around, but they are refurbishing them and encouraging people in all walks of life here in the United States and throughout the world to take the opportunity to be ready to give an answer for the faith and hope that we have. And there are all sorts of booklets about not simply on how to share your faith, but how to help somebody who's facing, depression, that you, not counseling them, but rather, encouraging them and helping them, being there for them. There's booklets and other resources that you can give to your children or grandchildren. personal devotions, simple reading things. There's many, many things. I'll be highlighting some of those, no doubt, in the paragraphs that I write. So are there any questions or concerns? See none.
Thank you, Pastor. Properties? Ron?
We're looking at making arrangements for asbestos reinspection. This is something that needs to be done every 3 years, but we're a bit behind schedule on that. So we're looking at that right now. Any questions? Anything else? Yes?
Who mandates that?
I'm not sure. I think it's state.
All of our asbestos is enclosed. For example, many years ago, we put the tile in over the green floors and all of that. They come in and, I mean, it's all enclosed.
I just want to make sure I understand that it is actually mandated and not just suggested by somebody who's
I believe it is. The state requires it.
Thank you.
Also through accreditation, they made a great recommendation that we get all of the things that get inspected on one document so that we can make sure everything's being done. A lot of it is done automatically with the elevators. There's a few, all of the HVAC is done automatically, but I think it's good for us to be able to see that. So.
Thank you. Human Care, Matt?
We had the great blessing of bolstering our Stephen Minister caregiver numbers by welcoming 5 new caregivers back in April at a commissioning. Meals at the Methodist Church right across the street that way, I think, or that here. We've signed up for 6 Saturdays for this year, and our third one is coming up on June 1st, and we are really in need of volunteers for that date. We only have, I think, 2 or 3 out of the 10 that we need currently for that date. The other dates are in September, November, and December. And then one thing I didn't mention on the slide is we recently had a request from someone's family member to help out with some meals during a difficult time for one of our church families. And that's something that we can very easily put together. So if you know of somebody within our church family who could use meals for a week, several weeks, a month, it's very easy to put that together online and get volunteers to do that. So please reach out to the church office, one of the pastors, myself, and be happy to assist with that.
Thank you. Stewardship, Nicole?
We received 89 annual contribution forms this year, which is down. Each year it has been continuing to go down. We do have a number of people who do participate, though, through Simply Giving. And if you do that, you can contact Chris Melcher in the school office if you would like to update the amount, the frequency, or the account number for that.
Youth? Brittany's not here. Mr. Berg.
We had a successful Absolved Higher Things Youth Retreat that took place this past February with over, I think it was 120 youth that were in attendance. We have 22 youth and 4 adults attending Higher Things Conference. Both St. Paul's here in town and Trinity are going together. The conference theme is Who Am I? The main catechist for this conference is the rapper, who's an LCMS, a member of the LCMS Flame. If you've not read his book, I would encourage you to check it out from CPH. It's called Extra Nos, and Flame is very inspiring. And we're also getting ready for the next year's Higher Things Youth Retreat.
Right, finance, Chris.
Just to kind of give you a quick update on what I see every Sunday that just comes strictly through the plate.
So, you know, it's bouncing back very nicely, and I'm sure my June statement will show even a nicer bounce back yet. The $54,609 was our distribution amount this year, which you've already approved. That's done by formula, and it's a very conservative formula, so that we're not taking all earnings. It's what amounts to about 4%. Since we have established our relationship with Wisconsin Bank and Trust, which is as long as I have records for. I know we had an endowment before that, and I'm sure that maybe they're in the church office, but my records only go back to the beginning of a relationship with Wisconsin Bank and Trust, which is 2016. We have given over $420,000 through disbursements to various projects and financial aids and tuitions and so forth. We have had earnings of over $660,000 during that same period of time, since 2016, the beginning when we established this relationship. You've approved the establishment of the Trinity Lutheran School endowment. That's exciting. I think you'll see a greater awareness coming this next year as we establish how we can help both the church endowment and the school endowment grow. Our committee is, there's 6 gentlemen on the committee. It's a 6-year term. Mike Lipom, Randall Hake, Houston Sprang, Zach Cloco, Dennis Barrow, and myself.
Any questions for Chuck?
I'll have a slide for him next time. Sorry.
Moving on to the anniversary committee, Joe is not here.
The parking lot is going to still, we're hoping for something through the city, but he's working on it.
Cemetery?
Lutheran Cemetery, Sue is not able to continue being the head of the Lutheran Cemetery, so we're going to have to find a replacement for her. But the others on the committee are covering things. Grass cutting is going well. There's a 2-year contract for the person there. They will be making concrete repairs at the mausoleum and near the cemetery office. And Mike Warner is our Lutheran Cemetery sexton. He's doing a really great job. He's, I know sales are up and those sorts of things. Is there anything, Sue, you want to add to any of that? Sounds good. Okay. Yes. You haven't gone into the principle of the endowment for it, but they don't make money, if that's what you're saying. $1.3 million. Okay. So a lot of improvements have, and Sue has done a fantastic job, and your committee has done a great job with that, Mark, and things are looking a lot nicer there. They had to overcome a lot of things from a previous sexton that we had there, but things are very much on the right track. So, and sales are a lot higher than they were. Yeah, that's coming along too. Yeah. Well, yeah, actually, Sue said, why didn't you tell them plots are available? So anyway, but that wasn't what the sermon was about.
Lutheran High School?
Yes. The Lutheran High School had their biannual delegate meeting on Monday, and so I was in attendance, as well as Jeff Rathel, and Tom Yerk was there on Monday. Matt Friedel was not able to attend, but we are the Trinity delegates who attend those meetings twice a year. A couple of notes from the meeting and from the report. They have their golf outing set for June 21st, and so if you are able to support that event, please contact Lutheran High. Lutheran High hosted its spring concert on Wednesday, May 15th. Approximately 500 people were in attendance there at the Fine Arts Center, so that was a great event. They have 51 students who have either applied or registered for classes for next year, which should be balancing out what they're graduating, should keep enrollment stable for next year. They have office remodeling beginning on Tuesday, May 28th, because that was this year's Fund a Cause for their auction. And then Scott Stilo gave an update on their debt reduction committee. I think it was over 300,000, a little bit over 300,000 was raised this year. They're still looking at about $4.6 million in debt there. So they were talking to us as delegates, looking for some ideas on how to, kind of be more visible in the community and their committee. They have a committee that's still working together consciously to bring down that debt. So those are kind of the main highlights from the meeting and the report, unless Carmen, anything else that you think I missed? Okay. Our 5th and 6th graders took a great field trip out to Christopher Farms today. That was sponsored by Lutheran High, and then visited Lutheran High afterward. Our teachers came back, so the kids had a great time. So we were very grateful that the weather held out, but they put together a really nice field trip as a targeted way to hit our 5th and 6th graders. They do some recruitment in our younger grades. They do some 7th and 8th grade visit days and things like that, but I feel like they were missing the 5th, 6th grade demographic. So they were really intentional this year with scheduling that field trip for the Salsa schools and putting us together. So that was great. Thank you, Carmen. I know you were instrumental in that field trip.
We'll move on to Concordia report.
Yes. As you all know, it's a very challenging time in higher education these days. If you've been watching the news, you know there are such things as demographic cliffs. People aren't having babies anymore, and so there's a challenge in higher education with not only having students come to college, but then also with many other things. So there are some challenges at Concordia University, Wisconsin, Ann Arbor right now. Back in February, the Board of Regents appointed a task force, 4 separate committees to study the possibility of Ann Arbor. There's been some challenges there to become an independent university of the Concordia University system. That report will be coming back to the board the end of next week. We have a special Board of Regents meeting on June 6th to talk about that, pray about it, and see how to move forward for the future of the university. Some highlights: Reverend Jonathan Baker was recently installed as the new campus pastor of Concordia University, Wisconsin at the baccalaureate service on May 4th. I was both at graduation and the baccalaureate service, and one of the cool things was I got to meet former Governor Martin Schreiber. Does anybody remember that name back in the 1970s? Yeah, still alive, Missouri Synod Lutheran, just the most funny guy in the world, and I think he's 97 years old, and just a genuine Christian leader. There is a highlight that I'd like to point out. If you haven't been at one of these before, I would encourage you to. Something called the Concordia Christian Leadership Series, and I know Chuck Benedum has invited numerous people throughout the years to go with him to attend that. This year, it's kind of interesting to have the leader of Quick Trip, one of our favorite places, John McHugh, who is the Vice President of External Relations for Quick Trip, who is also, I believe, Wisconsin Synod Lutheran, who will be presenting at that. And those are just kind of fun events to attend to see some of the wonderful things that are going on with Christian leaders in our world.
All right, tomorrow is our last day of school. We celebrate our last day in the park, half day at Firehouse Park. So we're very excited about that. We thank you for all of your support and another year of helping our students make known the love of Christ in our Sheboygan community. Our eighth graders will graduate tomorrow at Lutheran High School in our combined 8th grade graduation ceremony with Bethlehem and St. Paul. That will be at 7 o'clock at Lutheran High in the Worshipman Fine Arts Center. On the school end, logistically, we are switching over our payment method. Right now we use something called Blackbaud. We're switching over to something called Paya, which is integrated into our student information system. So from a financial perspective for us, that just helps simplify things a lot, especially for Chris and Colleen in the office. So that's something that the board approved earlier this year that will go into effect starting with people's July payments. Our enrollment is steady for next year, so we're graduating 19 8th graders, bringing in 18 3K students, and so that's keeping our enrollment right around where it is this year. We do have a couple of spots in 4K, which is unusual for us, so if you know someone who's looking for 4K, send them our way. We do have a small class going into 6th grade next year and a small class going into 7th grade next year. So when those classes graduate, if we're able to keep building from the bottom, then we should see an increase in enrollment again at that time. But next year, again, we're going to be graduating a class that's comparable to what we can bring in for 3K. So we'll probably see pretty stagnant enrollment numbers for the next couple of years until we can start building from the bottom there and start netting a student increase. We do have some elementary transfers that are coming in next year, which is great. We're very excited about that, but typically most of our new students are coming in through our preschool program. We gave you the staffing updates. On the teacher side, we are still in need of a full-time childcare teacher. That's a really dire need for us heading into the summer and next fall. And to give you an update on Maria Blas, she's doing well. She does have a brain tumor that's inoperable, but they have her on medication that has her seizures controlled. Her energy level is back. She's been able to return to much of her normal life, which is great, and they'll continue to monitor that tumor. So they're very excited that she's at least made some good positive progress in her health for that. We are in need of a maintenance employee for next year. I know that Ron was talking a little bit about building updates. We will have that need as well. In our accreditation report, which I listed a couple of things for you, and there's more than this that we'll be working on as a school over the next few years. I just listed a few of the things that I think you'll probably hear more about as a congregation, since the other things are very much kind of day-to-day operational things in the school. We brought up long-range planning. That was a recommendation by the committee. If you don't have a written long-range plan for the next accreditation cycle, which is 5 years from now, you will not be accredited as a school. So we do need to have a long-range plan that's written, that has checkpoints along the way for our goals for our overall organization, church and school. The salary scale, which John brought up, was a recommendation made by the committee. So when he says that it came up during recommendation, that was not something that we put in our own self-study. That was brought by the external committee. So John is correct in saying that there are some external forces at play as well, making sure that we are working on that as well. The next one is incorporation of mission across all communication, and that's really for us as a school to make sure that we're being consistent in all of our messaging, whether that's printed, oral, in our extracurricular activities, all of those things, so continuing to work on that. And then organizing our building and maintenance needs, which was brought up before. That was another recommendation, to put things on a schedule that's clear, that are making sure that all of these things are being updated regularly. Obviously, when you don't have someone in your maintenance position, with Carl being sick this fall, some of those things are just easy to get swept under the rug. And we've had a lot of turnover in that position as well, of having somebody on campus. And so having a document that organizes all of us is helpful from the church council perspective, so they know what needs to be done. And then also when we're hiring, we have something to give someone as well. So that's another part that we are working on. So those are some of the bigger things, and like I said, lots of smaller things that I shared with the staff and with the board. They were given the full report too. If you have any other questions, feel free to send me an email. I'm happy to send you the full report. I just wanted to report out the major ones that we'll be bringing before you a lot more as a voters' assembly.
Eric?
Just out of curiosity, where are we with enrollment total?
Right now for next year, we're at 186. And this year we're ending the year at 190, but I do have a couple of families whose registration is still pending. So I would anticipate we'll be right back at 190 when all said and done. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. The contra report? Sam?
Good evening. I would like to thank all of the musicians of the church, choirs. All the choirs these are groups that meet every single week. You're on the board, sometimes you meet once or twice a month. These people meet every single week to adorn our worship services, and that is something we thank God for. I would also like to invite you to the Hymn Festival, which is next Friday, May 31st at 6:30. That will be a good time for us to gather as a congregation to sing praises to God. And I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the people of Trinity for support for our family over these past several years, for all the encouragement, for your emphasis on music as a proclamation of the gospel to people, and for your support of that. Thank you.
You have our report. We have a lot of new members already, 29 new members since January. And Pastor Burke, you have about 10 new
or 10 new people in our latest new member class. So on Sundays, we always have a new member class going on, and one of us teaches in the gym, and one of us teaches the new member class. I know it's getting late, and the choir still wants to sing, but any questions that you might have of us, or do you want to add anything? No? I thought Easter and services, and Sam, thank you for all you've done for worship through the years. I think we should have a hand too.
Thank you. The next voters meeting is scheduled for September 18th at 6:30. With that, there is no other business, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn. I have a motion. Do I have a second? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Pastor?
Let's stand. We have a lot to be thankful for here at Trinity, and sing the common doxology as our closing prayer. Praise